The customers are going to dictate the pace of overall adoption of electrification. The overall trajectory is about growth. We'll sell more electric vehicles this year than we sold last year. The pace is showing that more and more customers are coming. But as we get further into the market, some of their needs and some of their challenges are going to play out in different ways.
Hello, and welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Evan Halper, a reporter covering the energy transition here at the Post. We have two segments for you today, looking at the race to decarbonize everyday life in America. Later, we'll be joined by Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. But first, I'm pleased to welcome Bob Holycross, Chief Sustainability Officer and Vice President at Ford. Bob, welcome to Washington Post Live.
Thanks, Evan. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. Let's start by talking about the narrative around EVs. It's been a little bit gloomy lately. A lot of concern about whether these cars are practical for people. We've seen some rental car companies sell some of their fleets. But Ford has seen an uptick and there's been record sales. So what's going on here? And was a slowdown kind of inevitable? And how should we be framing this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think sure, there's been some recent news on the slowing rate of growth, but it is still all about growth. And we knew as we launched our first generation electric vehicles, our F-150 Lightning pickup, our Mustang Mach-E, our E-Transit commercial vehicle franchise, that they were going to be hitting the market running. And boy, the uptick when we initially launched those vehicles was incredible to see because those early adopters were certainly looking for these types of vehicles that were not just electrified and providing zero emissions, but were full functioning and vehicles that were able to do everything that they need for work and for enjoyment and for transportation mobility in general. So yes, like a lot of technologies, you see those early adopters come on strong. There has been some moderation in the rate of growth, but as you mentioned, it is still growth. And we will see more sales this year than we did last year. But as we get into that early majority, we're going to start to see a little bit more sensitivity in terms of price and some of the other specific needs that those customers may have around charging infrastructure and the like. But we're going to meet those customers where they are. And for folks that aren't quite ready for a fully electrified vehicle, we're going to leverage our hybrid electric vehicles that we have and are leading in their segments, and also plug-in electrics, as well as highly efficient internal combustion engine vehicles. So the good news is for Ford, we're ready to meet customers where they need to be, but we're excited about the growth we're continuing to see, and we fully anticipate that this is going to be a bit of a bumpy ride, but the response has been great so far.
Can you talk to us about which models are proving most popular and why? What is it about certain models that drivers are liking? What's proving successful in your EV lines?
For us, and I mentioned the three products, but when you look at what small businesses, commercial fleets, what their needs are, it has been amazing to see the success of not only our Ford Pro commercial vehicle franchise business overall, but how well our electric commercial van, the E-Transit, has done and how that is resonating with those customers in particular. These are the customers, right, that are doing the math on total cost of ownership, vehicle uptime, minimal maintenance. They have needs to fulfill for their customers, and the last thing they need is any interruption in the ability to move their goods and services. And they're finding electrified vehicles can fulfill all those needs and actually save them substantial costs, and in not just operating costs for fuel saved in terms of charging, but just being able to keep those vehicles up because of the minimal maintenance that's required. So as we continue to see the different applications of electrified vehicles, not just in the retail market, but in the commercial market as well, those are going to be the use cases and the customers that are ultimately going to demonstrate just by proof of the use case how well these vehicles can be embraced by different segments of the market. So we've been really excited to see commercial vehicle customers in particular embracing this technology, and we're excited because our Ford Pro business is able to provide the full suite of services they need, not just the vehicles, but the charging solutions, the software solutions to be able to manage their businesses efficiently as possible, the financing. So it's really about the whole ecosystem, not just the electrified powertrain, which saves on emissions and operating costs, but how these digitally connected vehicles can enable a whole host of services and applications that businesses and retail customers probably never imagined before.
Can you talk to us about hybrid vehicles some? I mean, there's a lot of debate around where they fall and what's appropriate in terms of the timeline and in moving to all electric, or a lot of consumers seem to like the hybrid option. As the rollout of EVs ramps up, are we learning anything about consumer interest in they're not ready to go the full distance with electric, all electric, that hybrid is a bigger segment of the market than you expected? I mean, where do these fit into the transition?
Yeah, they're fitting in very well, and they're providing a bridge for some that aren't necessarily ready to go fully electric. But a lot of the attributes that customers are seeking in electrified vehicles are also available in hybrid vehicles as well. When you think about lower costs, right? Lower fuel costs and performance, no compromise on performance. So for us, in addition to our first generation fully electrified products, we've been leading in hybrids for some time now. Hybrids are not a new entry for Ford, and we're going to continue to double down on expanding our offering of hybrids by the end of this decade as well. And we see those customers embracing that technology because of the performance they can provide, the range that they can provide as well, but also the overall savings when it comes to operating costs without necessarily having to deal with some of the infrastructure or challenges there if those customers aren't quite ready. And then, of course, we have plug-in hybrid electric vehicles where there's the ability to operate on all electric mode for some period of time. That's giving customers experience with the charging infrastructure as well, but with the backup of having an internal combustion engine. So again, it really comes down to what are those individual use cases? What are customers looking for? And we see hybrids and plug-in hybrids playing a very important role in this overall transition.
So, in terms of the Inflation Reduction Act, which obviously the president's signature climate law, there's a lot of incentives for EVs in there, and also incentives to push EV production back to the U.S. and incentivize buying from companies like Ford. What impact is it having? Are consumers aware of the incentives that are available to them? Has it been enough to push more people into these cars?
Yeah, I think, it's continuing to play out. I think consumers are aware of them, certainly those that are in the market for an electric vehicle or a capable plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And it's going to play out over time. And we're seeing customers, coming to understand whether it's with our F-150 Lightning, which qualifies for the full $7,500 tax credit. We also have our plug-in hybrid electric Ford Escape and our Lincoln Corsair that qualify for the $3,750 incentive for those types of vehicles, all built here in the US. And look, the whole intention and what those policies are driving in terms of investment here in the US, manufacturing, is the right thing to do. And it's going to take not just the current incentives in the IRA and the evolution of those, but a broader holistic set of policies to help keep moving the industry forward and to really help the competitiveness of the U.S. and to help consumers be able to get into this type of technology and realize the benefits. So I think it's a bit still early days, but when we look at the current IRA incentives and the evolution of where those are headed, we see opportunity as more consumers come in to look at these types of products.
So, in terms of consumer attitudes, there seem to be two barriers. There's range anxiety, of course, and there's also concern about the cost of the cars, right? So, the average cost of an EV, as I understand it, is more than $53,400. And as I also understand it, Ford is losing money on these cars right now. And correct me if I'm wrong about that. But how do you bring down the price of these cars? And is it going to be able to happen on a timeline that's not going to disrupt this transition?
Yeah, it's an important question. There's no doubt affordability is top of mind for customers. And so when you look at the incentives that are out there today, not just the federal incentives under the IRA, but state incentives as well, and how those apply, you can take significant cost out of the product. But look, in order to get to the types of volumes and the more aggressive mix of these technologies into the future as we head towards 2030 and beyond, there's no doubt that we're going to have as an industry, a variety of products that are in the lower price points. And so as we look to our next generation of electric vehicles, we're working hard on getting all as much cost out as we can, getting efficient with the batteries, whether it's new battery chemistries that provide lower cost options, but also making sure consumers are aware of what the range of the batteries are and what they can provide, and whether a customer really needs to have some of the extended range capability that vehicles can provide. As more customers get into these vehicles and they realize, and this gets back to the charging or the range anxiety point that you make, as customers realize, especially those that can plug in at home and they're leaving the house every day with the equivalent of a full tank of gas, I think we're going to continue to see some rationalization in the battery market as well, and some of the realities of what range anxiety, or the lack of range anxiety, is by customers who realize they don't necessarily need some of the extended ranges that certain products offer. But the cost overall, whether it's the upfront cost, the operating cost, is going to continue to be key. And we're moving fast. We set up a Skunk Works program in California. We got a small team moving aggressively. We're excited about the progress that they're making. We're excited about the evolution of battery technology. The experience that we're gaining with these first generation products like the Lightning and the Mach-E and the E-Transit are providing us such valuable data and insights, not just from the consumer use cases, but as we continue to work with our partners on the technology development. And we're finding all kinds of ways to get cost out of the product. And yes, it takes time, but as we move into our second generation of products and the lower cost, more affordable types of EVs that we're working on with that program I just talked about, we're going to meet customers where they are, and we're going to introduce these products where we can fully leverage some of these learnings and efficiencies so that we can attack that key point of affordability for consumers. So it is going to be an evolution, but we're excited with the learnings that we've had and what we're seeing from our customers and what they're telling us today.
So one of your competitors in China, BYD, they can sell a car for $16,000. And as you know, President Biden this week announced new tariffs, quadrupling them on such cars to, I think, 100%. So two questions about this. One, can you put into context why this competitor is able to sell a car for so much cheaper? And two, the importance of these tariffs, and does Ford need them to be able to compete in this marketplace?
Well, look, we're gonna have to be able to compete on the value equation that our products provide consumers based on content, attributes of the vehicles, and these are things that have to go beyond, again, just the fact that they're battery electric and zero emissions. And I think one of the key things as we continue to look at the suite of services that we can provide with these vehicles and what customers are willing to pay for to have those different capabilities, that's going to help that overall value equation. But clearly, the material cost and the bill of material is something we're going to have to continue to attack. And with these first generation vehicles that we've had out there, often vehicles that are first in their segment and leading, those learnings on those vehicles are going to be so key as we continue to take that cost out. And then, yes, from a broader policy perspective, we're going to have to continue to have the right mix of different policies that help consumers come to these technologies, ones that are certainly ready, but affordability maybe continues to be the key barrier to them. So we're working hard to make sure, whether it's vehicle emission standards, the incentives under the IRA, other policies that help kind of keep that playing field level so that automakers can compete on the things that we're used to competing on, is going to continue to be the key piece of this. But we have to be able to deliver that value to the customer on what we do with the products we offer, the services that we provide, and the technology that evolves in these segments.
So another company in the market, Tesla, has had the most success at building a national charging network. And so much so that other companies like yours have entered a partnership with them to use their chargers. Tesla's hit a rough patch, as you know, and I think laid off some of its supercharger team. So, with this range anxiety issue and sort of the need to get more chargers out there, how does what Tesla's going through impact Ford's plans for using the supercharger network and sort of the availability of chargers looking forward?
Yeah, there's no doubt the availability of chargers is one of the key things that contributes to, customers' potential anxiety around range, right? They want to know that wherever they go, whether it's in their daily commute or their long distance trips, that they're going to have that ability to charge. And so one of the things that we knew was key when we launched our first generation of products was that we were going to have to provide our customers with as much access to as many chargers as possible. And yes, as we worked on developing charging standards, through the Society of Automotive Engineers and other industry collaborations on some of those initial technologies, we knew the overarching goal had to be what's best for the consumer, what's easiest for the consumer. And so, yes, as different technologies and standards evolve, we were very open and always looking to figure out, again, with that goal in mind of how can we give our customers the most access. So the North American charging standard is one that we are moving to. We're excited that even for our customers that have electric vehicles in hand today, that we're providing free adapters so they can start using those chargers immediately. And then as we move into our next generation of products and have the vehicles built with the charging capability around the NACS standard, is gonna just make it that much more confident and attractive for those consumers to come to the product. So we feel really good about the access that we're providing, both in terms of the existing network that our customers had access to, and now this new access that they have to the Tesla charging network as well.
So the lack of available chargers does speak to that first question about sort of anxiety people have and sort of the gloominess of the narrative around EVs in the last few months. And personally, having rented a car in a place where there was not a lot of access to chargers, and I have familiarity with electric cars, it was really a challenge to be able to actually like drive. I was in Portland, Maine. I was looking for chargers, and it was like really tough to do this business trip.
Sure.
So, in terms of the pace at which chargers are getting installed, it seems like we're just behind, despite all this government interest and government investment. Any thoughts on why that is and what policy barriers there are to getting more chargers installed more quickly?
Well, I actually think the good news is we are starting to see progress, and we're starting to see the pace of new charger installations increasing daily. I know for myself, I'm currently driving our Mustang Mach-E, and with a couple of the long road trips that I've done over the last couple months, I notice on my phone where I can track, what chargers are available on given routes. I'm seeing new chargers come online every day on the routes that I'm used to taking. So I think we're going to continue to see more and more, especially of the DC fast charging stations along some of the highway corridors and other pieces. The transportation infrastructure bill set a good foundation for how we can ramp up to having a significant increase in the amount of fast chargers available. I think like anything else with any new program of that scope and magnitude, it takes time. I think the good news is a lot of the states have already submitted their plans. They've gotten their approvals. They're picking the companies that they want to use to install those chargers. And now we're starting to see the construction and implementation. So between the fast charging installations and I think again more of the consumer awareness and education that people understand more and more that whether it's fast charging or even just plugging these vehicles in to standard 110-volt chargers if their vehicles are parked for extended periods of time, that again they're finding that range anxiety may not be something that is quite the concern that many have characterized it to be. But there's no doubt more has to be done, and that's why in the meantime, whether it's us building out the access to existing chargers through the expansion of our network, as we talked about, or the U.S. federal government or governments around the world continuing to invest in that infrastructure is just going to continue to be so key. But I think we're making progress, and we're going to continue to see a lot more as hundreds of chargers are added, day by day and over the coming years for sure.
One last question for you, Bob. The choke point for a lot of buyers is actually the dealership. There's been a lot of conversation about people go to the dealership and there's just not always a lot of interest in selling them an EV. There's not an EV on the lot. The salespeople may not be that experienced in dealing with EVs, or they may not want to sell them because they want to do a service contract. And as we know, EVs don't require as much service. Is Ford doing anything to educate its dealers and get them more on board with actually pushing these cars and making them available to people who ask about them?
We are. I mean, and our dealers have been great partners, and it's been a journey and an experience in terms of we know collectively customers are very keen to make sure they have access to all the information that they need. A lot of these customers are savvy, so obviously they're doing a lot of their research and understanding online. But we know that customers also want to have the option and the availability of being able to go to a physical location, go to dealers, understand more of what's needed. And look, our dealers want to provide that type of service to customers as well. So they are definitely a key piece of this. We've been really excited about the dealers that have been coming online to fully sell and service our electrified products. I think customers are finding that when they go to dealers, they are seeing vehicles in inventory for a long time. As we knew when we had initially launched, keeping up with the pace of demand meant that their vehicles weren't necessarily sitting on dealers' lots. But as we continue to provide customers with the full suite of options they need, whether it's fully electric, hybrid electric, the plug-in electric vehicles, highly efficient internal combustion engine vehicles, our dealers play a key role in that. So we're going to continue to work with them and collectively work to understand what the ongoing needs of our customers are, so that when they come in and they're looking for a Ford, we're right there ready to serve them in whatever ways and through whatever interface they need.
Bob, I'm afraid we're out of time. This was a great conversation. We had more questions for you. Hopefully, we'll have you back soon. We
I'd
do
love to.
appreciate great. We do appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and we'll be following this closely. And thank you for all of you who are watching. Please stay with us for the next segment here on Washington Post Live.
What makes New York, New York? It's the energy. Siemens technology is helping the Javits Center transform into one of the most sustainable convention centers in the U.S. By generating and storing its own power and using innovative microgrid technology, we are showing that a clean energy future is possible. And if we can do it here, we can do it anywhere.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Koch. As we focus on the task of decarbonizing cities and transportation, a big question is emerging. Is our power grid ready? A recent analysis found the U.S. is now on a path to achieve a 40% reduction in emissions by 2030, and it's forecast that EV sales will help drive emissions reductions. But that progress is at risk because even as clean energy sources increase, they just aren't scaling fast enough to meet new electricity demand that's coming from growing sectors such as manufacturing and infrastructure. Well, joining me today to outline some available solutions is Barbara Humpton. Barbara is CEO of Siemens USA. And Siemens is a technology company working on the front lines of the effort to transform American infrastructure. And they're doing this by manufacturing more than 1 million EV chargers in the US, by spearheading grid modernization projects, and by answering the call to bring high-speed rail to America. Well, Barbara, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Kathleen.
Barbara, what are some of the trends that you're seeing that are creating this spike in electricity demand? And are you concerned that the power grid may not be equipped to meet it?
Well, one thing's for certain, our economy can only grow as fast as our power grid enables it to. And we do see some trends, Kathleen, that are both exciting and challenging. And the first one is data centers. I think you're hearing that the AI boom is leading to the construction of more and more data centers, and each one requires a tremendous amount of energy. AI data centers can require 5 times more power than traditional facilities. We're seeing new investment in manufacturing as well. The federal investment is drawing private sector capital off the sidelines. And in fact, at Siemens, we've had to expand our own footprint to produce the electrical components that are needed to help expand the grid so that those data centers can run. We're also committed, as you said, to the EV transition. And while that has been slow recently, it's actually a good thing because the charging network needs to catch up. So we've heard the grid called the greatest machine ever created and the great enabler of American innovation and our economy. But the grid now faces its biggest challenge in enabling more economic growth while still driving forward decarbonization. As it's currently designed, no, the grid isn't ready for what's coming. But I'm confident there are technologies that are going to help us address the challenge.
Well, Barbara, so clearly change is needed, and I know we need to move quickly. Is this problem solvable, and what do you see as the best solutions?
Well, I really think we can create magic if we focus on an area called the grid edge. That's where power is coming off of the transmission from power generators, and it's getting down to where it will ultimately reach end users. That grid edge is where we can bring in technologies that lay the foundation for smarter, more distributed, the making use of the resources and transmission resources that are available to us for clean and resilient electricity. Now, think about the ability to deploy microgrids or install solar arrays across buildings and campuses. For years, we saw the business case improve for making these investments in localized energy systems as the price of renewables fell. Well, now we have the tools to manage those systems. We've got the software that can help control when and if we use certain assets. We have platforms and data management solutions. And now with generative AI, back to the top, we can help, we can even use those tools to help solve those scaling problems. Just this past week, I had the chance to visit a site out in Arizona. I'm on the board of Fluence Energy, a battery storage company. And what you can see is with large scale solar, where there was always a question of, are we producing the power at the time we need it? Now we can produce power when the sun shines, store it in batteries, and have power on demand.
So exciting. Well, let's take a look ahead now as we close, Barbara. And you're known for being an optimist. You have this great podcast called The Optimistic Outlook that gets people thinking about ways that technologies can help us address these tough problems, including climate change. So if we can successfully modernize the grid, how will this impact our environment and the U.S. economy?
Well, a lot of people seem to present this as an either or, and this is not that's a false choice because these tools that we're introducing now to the grid actually enable us to introduce renewables. They enable us to then create more resilience in the network that we have. And that is going to be essential to growing our economy. So American manufacturing and our leadership in digitalization depend on our ability to hit this trifecta, if you will. And it also reminds me of something else. Yes, our economy can only grow as fast as the grid enables, but our grid can only expand as fast as the people behind it. And that's why Siemens has been investing in training programs, things like Everyone Charging Forward, a program to bring people into jobs manufacturing and maintaining electric vehicle charging networks. So it's an exciting time for people and for our power.
Barbara Humpton, CEO of Siemens USA. Thank you so much for joining me today. And now I'll toss it back to the Washington Post.
It's not just a sustainability strategy, but also an economic development strategy. For example, we think, the largest cool pavement program in the country, where it's a lighter sealant on city streets, can make a 10-degree difference in terms of summer heat retention. And because of our commitment to that type of investment, the company also located a factory in our community. So creating jobs, not just for the products made for our community, but to bring them out of our community. So from my perspective, investing in sustainability has been a win all around.
Hello, and welcome back to Washington Post Live. For those of you just joining us, I'm Evan Halper, a reporter covering the energy transition here at the Post, and I'm pleased to be joined now by Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego. Mayor Gallego, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So as we saw in that intro video, Phoenix is booming. It's booming economically, and people are just moving there in droves. So can you talk to us about what's behind this boom that Phoenix is experiencing?
It has been an intentional strategy. Phoenix was once incredibly dependent on the real estate market, and during the 2008 downturn, we were hit harder than almost any other community, except for maybe some of our peers in the Las Vegas area. We decided that we wanted a more diverse economy in areas like bioscience and technology. I worked before running for mayor at an electric and power provider in a few areas, including the R&D function and economic development. I saw what happened to communities when they invested in areas like bringing Intel, which is in our region, and how much more resilient they were when you had diverse industries. My first trip as mayor was to Taiwan to recruit TSMC to come to Phoenix. They are the company that makes chips for Apple, NVIDIA, and more. They make the most advanced semiconductors in the world, and right now they are happening in Taiwan. We as the United States, for many reasons, including job creation and national security, want the best chips to be made in the United States. TSMC committed to our community in 2020, and that left us very well positioned when Congress and the Biden administration passed the CHIPS Act, which attempts to bring that leading edge manufacturing back to the United States. So we are very excited to have had two of the largest CHIPS Act awards in our region, and it's doing what we wanted. It's so fun as mayor to meet the people who are powering this American manufacturing revolution. I got to sit down with some iron workers very recently. The average iron worker in Phoenix is making $135,000. I met a young woman who'd recently graduated from high school, and she's making more than I am. I'm the mayor of Phoenix, and she's doing ironworking in semiconductors. And it's just the benefit to her entire family. I met several parents who are helping not just their immediate family, but their sister and her kid as well. In some ways, I wonder if I was 19 and was making this kind of money, how much I would waste on shoes. So maybe it was good that I didn't have that kind of job, but it's so fun to meet the people who benefit from bringing back American manufacturing leadership in semiconductors. It's incredible for Phoenix.
So speaking of that manufacturing boom, I mean, to put a number on it, there's been something like a $60 billion investment from these chip makers alone. That obviously is leading to the jobs you're talking about. It's also leading to some growing pains, right? So housing's gotten expensive in the Phoenix area. So you're dealing with issues with that. There's also questions about whether there are even enough construction workers around to meet the need to build these plants. We've seen some stories about a shortage of labor. So how are you managing the challenges this growth is bringing in terms of raising costs and some of these other issues that come along with that kind of robust growth?
Our interest in the housing market really predated TSMC's investment in Phoenix. We were the fastest growing city in the country before TSMC committed to our community. Part of it is it's a great opportunity. We have a lot of different jobs and good weather. Every time there's a blizzard in the East Coast, we get some folks who move out here. So I don't think it's fair to pinpoint housing challenges on the semiconductor industry, but it unquestionably has created a huge interest in construction jobs. I was recently at the sheet metal union, and they're buying the building next door because they need to dramatically expand their training program for apprentices. People have opportunities in the construction industry that they did not have before. Our Carpenters Union has a great partnership with an organization that helps people who've been in the criminal justice system. Those workers then have a chance to get very good high wage jobs, and I assume that reduces the temptation to go back into some of the challenges that got them into the criminal justice system. Those individuals in the Carpenters program are not working in semiconductors, but the boom has created the demand for that labor and made it economical to do training investments more broadly in the community. So to me, it is good news that people are able to get these high wage jobs, but we have had to have an all hands on deck approach to encouraging people to go in to the building trades. It's really impressive how much the community has stepped up. Our high schools are creating programs for people to go into advanced manufacturing and construction. Our community college has wide support from the residents to do a program in that area. And we're just seeing a lot of people go into those trades. So to me, Phoenix moving towards a higher wage workforce is great news.
Let's unpack some of how Phoenix is looking at dealing with the housing crunch that it's dealing with in lots of communities across America, or as you know, there's a lot of discussion about density and how you can make communities more dense, build more housing in places where there's transportation, and there's obviously a lot of sprawl in Arizona. So what kind of measures are you taking in Phoenix to sort of do more infill development, build more dense housing, addressing this through these kinds of zoning changes? There's often reluctance to this from people who own existing houses. What kind of plans do you have regarding making urban areas more dense?
Our voters strongly supported a plan to expand our public transit system. We are tripling our light rail system, which is a fixed rail transit program. Siemens is actually a partner of ours on that. And the voters have more than once voted to invest in that program. That allows us more density along rail corridors. And we've seen an enormous amount of condos and apartments go up along the rail corridors. We are also trying to change policies to make it easier to do infill. We unanimously supported a policy to make it easier to put casitas in the backyard, so add more housing on existing heights. We've been really pushing and incentivizing to get more affordable units in the projects that are going up, as a lot of the demand has been driven by more luxury level products. And our private sector partners have responded to that. We're also looking at all the land that the city owns and seeing if we could put that towards housing. We're hiring in our permitting departments and putting more of the tools online with self-service so that the permitting process can go faster. We also have some neat technology solutions. We have now a great company here that does pre-printed housing. So that is a technology that allows it to go up much more quickly with more efficient levels of personnel. We have shipping container housing here. So I believe we still have the tallest shipping container housing in the country, a great apartment complex. It was enormously popular during Super Bowl when people wanted to stay in fun experiences. Shipping container housing can be made with robots indoors. And so that helps attract a certain workforce that's very excited about that kind of quality job. So we really try to innovate, do a bunch of different products. People have a huge variety of needs, and we want to make sure we have great housing for all of them.
So one of the biggest challenges with the kind of growth you're experiencing, especially industrial growth, is it comes with emissions. Phoenix is a sort of climate forward-thinking city. Arizona's got its own climate goals. How are you thinking in terms of making this all work in tandem? You've been talking about, economic growth does not need to be, mutually exclusive from meeting climate goals. Can you give us an example of how you're proceeding in Phoenix in a way where these goals can work in tandem?
Absolutely. My background is I have an environmental degree, and I first got involved at the City of Phoenix through our Environmental Quality Commission, which is a citizen commission that advises the mayor and council on policies related to sustainability. So my first civic activity at the city was our solar energy standard, and pleased to share we have more solar installed on city facilities than any other city in the country, which makes sense for the sunniest big city in the United States. We want to be leaders on reducing emissions. We are very much at the forefront of climate change as a challenge. And so that's why we're betting big on sustainable technologies for future industries. Semiconductors actually can enable so much of this revolution. The chips that TSMC makes can make data centers 10 times more efficient. So that helps with the work Barbara was talking about in reducing emissions that way. The advanced electric vehicles we've talked about today also require a lot of chips to be efficient. We're going to be making those in Phoenix. We also have a focus on circular economy, which is taking products or taking what used to be trash in landfills and turning it into new products. And we have a variety of different initiatives in that area that we hope will create great jobs, support our entrepreneurs, and reduce emissions. One that I recommend to other mayors is our microfactory. It's a partnership with Goodwill, Arizona State University, and one of our local entrepreneur groups, Hustle Phoenix. They take hard to recycle materials and turn them into plastic pellets. Entrepreneurs can then come up with new uses for the plastic pellets or create existing products. So the mayor's office is going to get a makeover soon. We're going to get some tables made with plastics recycled in Phoenix, Arizona. We just hosted the Final Four for the men. We're going to take all of those signs and directional pieces of information that are plastic and recycle those into cool new products. So if there's any UConn fans who are watching and have very favorable memories of the Final Four, you might be able to buy cool recycled products made with some of the items from the Final Four.
So summer's approaching, and obviously Phoenix is someplace that's dealing with a lot of extreme heat. And this has become an increasing concern for a lot of cities around America, and a concern that's intensifying, I think, faster than a lot of policymakers may have anticipated. So how are you approaching this? And as the grid becomes more unstable and the extreme weather becomes more frequent, how are you thinking about summer, and what steps are you taking to make sure people are safe and cool?
We are trying to get the city ready to be as resilient as possible. We are investing in energy storage. So Barbara mentioned she was just in Arizona for one of the many companies in that space. The storage products helps our grid be resilient, especially as we move towards more and more solar energy. There's still a demand for electricity as the sun is setting, and so storage helps us. As a city, we have several roles in that, including making sure we have good modern building codes to support and accommodate those products and make sure that they stay safe. We at the city are also particularly focused on our most vulnerable. We are setting up an ever more ambitious network of cooling centers so that people have a place to go if they're experiencing homelessness or they have a power outage. We are trying to equip our firefighters with new tools to help people who have heat stroke, but also to stay safe. We have mobile cooling units that we can send out on a fire and give a chance for our firefighters to get cool water and deal with some of the challenges that are around heat that happen with any fire, but are particularly acute during the summer. I've actually shared some of the things our fire department has done with mayors in Europe, which had challenges around heat over the last 2 summers that they've never had to deal with before. Heat is an annual challenge for us in Phoenix, and so we have citywide structures in place. We have an Office of Heat Response that spends the entire year planning around heat and making sure we have an all-hands-on-deck approach so that whatever the weather brings, the city is focused on addressing it.
So another issue involving the weather, obviously, is water scarcity. And out west, and Arizona in particular, and in Phoenix, you're looking at, in the decades to come, a real emergency when it comes to water. There not being enough by 2121. The projections we've seen show that you'll be short the amount of water it would take to serve 17 million households. So as you're growing so quickly, how do you factor in this water scarcity, and how's it impacting your development plans?
Our voters passed a long-term strategy for the city that said we want to be the most sustainable desert city. That's ambitious marching orders, but we hope we're up for it. As I mentioned before I ran for mayor, I worked in water, which is an unusual background for a big city mayor, but one that's been very helpful as a desert city. We are trying a variety of different solutions, from technology to conservation. We are investing in a billion with a B water recycling plant so that we can take water in our existing system and use it again. We are also trying to help our residents and businesses conserve water. That can be helping businesses finance cooling tower retrofits, which save a lot of water. Or it can be working with our homeowners association to provide incentives to remove water guzzling grass. We've updated our building codes to make sure we focus on our beautiful Sonoran Desert landscaping and not try to replicate East Coast lush green grass lawns. At the same time, we are still very much putting a push towards shade tree. We try to plant native species to our ecosystem, and we have tree farms that particularly focus on deep taproots so that trees can withstand low water conditions, but we want that shade and the cooling effects that come with it. So we're hoping to be very intentional about being water responsible, and we welcome companies that have good solutions. We hope to be a source of innovation around water and technology. And we've welcomed companies from all over the world that have great cutting edge technology to help us manage and understand our water, as well as to use less of it. Many companies that have big corporate ambitious goals have partnered with us on their water saving programs. For example, P&G tries to replace the water they used in their manufacturing process, and they've worked with us at public housing to install leak sensors and reduce wasted water in appliances such as toilets at our public housing. So that helps our residents have better quality facilities, it helps us reduce water use, and it helps P&G with their very ambitious goals. I have to say, putting sensors on our equipment has so inspired our maintenance department. They are on top of leaks and fixing them incredibly quickly. So a win for all.
Well, Mayor Gallego, we're unfortunately out of time. This has been a fascinating conversation, and we appreciate you joining us here on Washington Post Live.
Thanks for having me back.
And thanks to everyone out there who joined us today. For a free trial subscription of the Washington Post, go to washingtonpost.com/live. We'll look forward to seeing you next time, and thanks again.